Hi, welcome back. For today's video, I'm gonna be doing a foundation application tutorial for a flawless foundation application that looks like skin. So let's get started. It's really important to have the right skin prep for your skin type. I have dry, rough skin with some dry patches, so I have to use a lot of hydrating skincare before using foundation. So I like to start with a hydrating toner. For this tutorial, I'm using the Human Nature Hydrating Face Toner. So I just like to apply it with my fingers and pat it on the skin until it is well absorbed. Next, I like to use a cream moisturizer. So my options are the First Aid Beauty Priming Moisturizer or the First Aid Beauty Ultra Repair Cream. So when I'm using more dewier foundations, I also switch moisturizers. I can use more lightweight moisturizers like the Uno Skincare Tank in Moist or the Celetec Aqua Moisturizer. For this tutorial, I'm using the First Aid Beauty Ultra Repair Cream because I'm using a very matte foundation. So I just like to use this amount or even more sometimes, but it's summer so I'm using a bit less. And I apply it all over my face with light massaging and then also tapping it onto the skin so that not only does it absorb well, but it also lays flat any dry patches. For primers, I like to use hydrating primers as well more than mattifying primers because I have dry skin. So it's also very important to use the appropriate primer for your foundation. So again, I like to use hydrating primers. So these are some of the ones that I like to use. For this tutorial, I'm using the Catrice Prime and Fine Beautifying Primer, which is a really nice dewy primer that kind of blurs imperfections but also adds a bit of luminosity to the skin. I like to use a small amount, like a pea-sized amount, and just apply it the same way that I do with the moisturizer. I rub it onto my fingers first and then tap it onto the skin so that it really presses onto the pores. Aside from applying primer under foundation, I also like to mix a small amount with my foundation. So I like to use like a 1:3 ratio. So for every part of the primer, like there would be 3 parts of foundation. So I like to use just 1 pump of the Fenty Beauty Pro Filtr foundation all over my face. So I mix that with like a 1/3 pump equivalent of the Catrice Prime and Fine Beautifying Primer. I also like to correct the undertone of this foundation because I have an olive undertone, so I mix some green corrector or green pigment with the foundation. So I just mix them all together in this acrylic palette using a plastic spatula. This also helps to thin out the foundation so that it applies really well on top of the skin. To apply foundation, I like to use a brush first to spread out the foundation all over my face. Make sure that you're using a clean brush because a dirty brush can leave streaks and just not blend out foundation very well. So I'm using a clean Sephora Pro 47 brush and I'm using it to just spread the foundation evenly starting from the center of my face and moving outwards. So it is heaviest, or it has the heaviest coverage on the center of my face, but it shears out outwards so that there are no lines in between my hairline and jawline and the foundation. In areas where I need more coverage, I like to stipple the foundation so that it covers better instead of spreading it out.
Windows down, fall asleep to the ocean sounds, no stresses. We don't need a plan, that's how you do when you living in a camper van. We taking flight just like a bird. I think we're higher than we ever were. Yeah, we can't.
And this is how it looks with the foundation on one side of the face and without foundation on the other side of the face. Now, to be perfectly honest, you can already stop here because it already looks fine, but I really like to use a damp sponge to sort of remove the excess foundation sitting on top of the skin. So I just bounce it all over my face and it kind of removes the excess product that's just sitting on top. On the other hand, you can also just use a damp sponge without the brush, and it also works fine, but it doesn't give the best coverage. So if you want fuller coverage, you're gonna need to use a brush before using a sponge. Now you can clearly see the excess product that the sponge has absorbed. Now this is what it looks like with one layer of foundation all over my face. So I just used again one pump of the Fenty Beauty Pro Filtr foundation. So it doesn't have the full coverage, and you can see on my nose it's still a bit sheer, so I add a bit more product that's left over on the palette. So I just use my finger and use it to pat the foundation onto my nose. I find that this works best in giving great coverage on the nose without emphasizing the texture, because I have a lot of texture on my nose. I want to minimize that, and using a brush, it just causes micro exfoliation, and it also emphasizes some dry flakes. So by using a finger, it's like using a sponge but with more coverage. And this is how my skin looked before foundation, and this is how my skin looks now after foundation. So remember that foundation is just there to even out the skin tone and not really to hide all of the blemishes. We have concealer for the blemishes and the under eyes. So I really like using foundation this way. I think it gives me the best coverage but still at a skin-like finish, or at least the coverage that I prefer. And I actually don't set foundation. Instead, I just set the places that I used concealer. So that's my under eyes or any blemishes on my face. And I like to use yellow toned powders because they work best for my skin tone. If you want to see how I conceal my dark circles, I have a concealing tutorial on my channel, and I will link it up here or in the description box down below. Now, I don't like to use a lot of powder. I use maybe a moderate amount of powder, and I like to use a fluffy brush to apply it, either a fluffy brush or a flat foundation brush. This way I get to control exactly where to powder, and it also lets me control the amount of powder that I apply. If you need to conceal any blemishes, make sure to do it before applying powder over the rest of your face. So I like to use either my fingers or eyeliner brushes to conceal any blemishes. So I just use cream concealers, and either I pat it on with my finger or tap it in with any precise eyeliner brush.
Yo, listen up. I'm gonna tell you something right now. You best not ever forget. This is it, man. This is your life.
Now I just apply powder over my T-zone and the spots that I concealed using the same fluffy brush. And this is the finished look with the rest of my makeup, and you can see that my skin still looks like skin, although it doesn't have the fullest coverage that you would see from other types of makeup, but this is the right amount of coverage that I prefer. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel down below, leave a comment, hit the notification bell so that you are notified every time I upload a new video. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye!